Hey everybody, hope you're doing well on this Friday afternoon. It is September the 13th, almost halfway through the month, which is pretty crazy to believe. September is almost half over, but we got a lot to get into today. Week 2 in the NFL has already begun. We're going to look at the lines for every game later on in the show. We're also going to talk about some college football action that I like this week, and we're going to preview UFC 306 at Sphere tomorrow night, which should be a historic event. Over $18 million put into it by the UFC. Sugar Sean O'Malley fighting Merab Dvalishvili for the bantamweight title in the main events. We'll get into that later on in the program. Let's try to get to some baseball towards the end with some interesting races going on. You got Shohei Ohtani chasing 50-50. Sure, it looks like he's gonna get there. So some interesting things certainly to talk about in baseball over the next couple weeks before we get to the end of the season. And the season's actually over 2 weeks Sunday. So not a whole lot longer to go before we get to the postseason October baseball, which is always fantastic. But we start today with the obvious, and if you didn't get to watch football last night, if you haven't watched a sports show this morning, if you haven't read even a headline of anything, then last night it was Bills Dolphins in Miami, Hard Rock Stadium, division rivalry, short week, and the Bills crushed the Dolphins. That should be the headline. Bills crushed the Dolphins. And that would have been the headline because the Bills were dominating. They had a 24-10 lead at halftime. Josh Allen hardly had to have a successful drive because they had short fields, and James Cook had an awesome first half. So it was looking, okay, Bills are going to crush the Dolphins. Bills plus 2.5, which was the easy pick to take the Bills. They own the Dolphins. They have for years. And if you're ever betting Bills-Dolphins, you always take the Bills. That's just, in particular, it doesn't even have to be in Buffalo. If it's in Buffalo in December, of course, Dolphins aren't going to go in the cold and win. But we saw what happened. Bills destroy the fish. Miami was a disaster. Their offense hasn't really been that effective through 2 weeks. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, pretty quiet. Jonnu Smith, Devon Achane, the focal points of the offense. So that could all be discussed. The fact that the Dolphins defense leaves something to be desired, but we knew that going into the season, losing players like Christian Wilkins and Andrew Van Ginkel, Bradley Chubb being on the injured list, Jalen Phillips coming off a torn ACL. So they had a lot of problematic things going into this season already. But then in the third quarter, first possession of the third quarter, of the second half, I should say, for the Dolphins, they're driving down the field, and Tua decides to take off on a third down, looking to pick up a first, and he collides with, oddly enough, Damar Hamlin. Tua initiated the contact. Tua did not slide. He ran into Damar's chest, and he went down. And it took him some time to get back up. And you saw his hands. You saw his body, the way it moved. It was not good. Tua suffered another concussion on the play. Tua is out for an indefinite period of time. And it's not, the question is, it's with a quarterback, if it was a first concussion, it'd be, well, how long is he going to be out? Does he miss a game? Does he have to get through protocol, and could he play next week? You might go, oh, he got a concussion on a Thursday. He has longer now to get to next Sunday to play. That's not the conversation here. Because Tua Tagovailoa has technically had 4 concussions in his NFL career, if you ask me. 2022, week 3, playing the Bills. Throws the ball away. As he does, he takes a hit, snaps his head back. He gets back up. He actually finished that game. And I don't know how he finished that game because he had a concussion on that play. I don't care what anybody says, but he did. And it wasn't really talked about, wasn't really discussed. Miami then was on a short week playing the Cincinnati Bengals in Cincinnati. So he played Sunday, then you go Thursday. That Thursday night, he had the incident where his head was slammed back, his hands twitching everywhere. We remember it. It was a scary, scary moment. And he had a concussion for several weeks. So that was technically his first diagnosed concussion. If you ask yours truly, it was number 2. We then go to Christmas Day, 2022. My family and I were at this game, Green Bay Packers, Miami Dolphins. Dolphins are trying to push to make the playoffs. And midway through the third quarter, Tua just leaves the game with an injury. Turns out to be a concussion. He doesn't play the rest of the year. We thought then his career could be over. But when he comes back, he bulks up, does jiu-jitsu, learns how to fall better, puts on some mass, and he plays every game last season. Doesn't hardly miss a snap. One of the healthier quarterbacks in football. And there was 63 quarterbacks who played last year. The Dolphins only had to use one, Tua. So you're like, okay, maybe he's pushed through it. He's healthy. He gets a huge contract in the offseason. And then what happened last night? Disaster is what happened last night for the Miami Dolphins. Nobody wants to see that. Tua seems like a really good dude. Family man. Kids. I think he's got at least 2 kids. Wife. And 4 concussions, if you ask me, in a 2-year period. That's awful. It's disaster. Nobody wants it. And I said it's different from other stories because if it was just a quarterback who had his first concussion, you go, okay, how long is he going to be out? When does he come back? That Dolphins sideline, the way Mike McDaniel gave Tua a kiss on the head when he left the field, it felt different. It was different. This could be it. Last night could have been Tua's final game as an NFL player. That's not hyperbole to me because he's had a history. We've seen these instances with Tua Tagovailoa. To me, there is no wrong answer. What happens? If Tua wants to play again and the doctors say he can, I don't begrudge him at all. I'm not going to be a person that tells him you can't play anymore. There was a doctor who went on a show I actually like and listen to every day, the Dan Le Batard show at Stu Gatz a couple of years ago, who said that the Miami Dolphins doctors and the Miami Dolphins organization should be jailed for playing Tua Tagovailoa. What an individual human being does, that's their business. Now, if you cross the line and you do certain things that break the law or things like that, then you get punished for it. But in this instance, if Tua wants to play football again and he is cleared, then I don't think any person should have a problem with it because he's making an individual decision with his family. Now, personally, knowing what kind of money he has coming to him, a lot of it guaranteed, I would consider retirement. 4 concussions in 2 years. He wants to be a more mobile quarterback. The second game of the year, you try to be more mobile and you get hurt. And it's not a play that was dangerous. It wasn't a play that was violent. He simply was running and fell into Damar Hamlin. And he woke up with a concussion. Damar Hamlin, it's so fascinating. He died on the field in Cincinnati. And now he's the starting safety for the Bills. It's awesome that he's playing. It's awesome that he can do it. He's a story of a guy who, quite frankly, overcame and beat the odds. Tua very well could. For him, get the help that you need, whatever that might be. Take time off. Talk to your family. See how you feel. To think, he's had 4 concussions in the NFL. He's had surgery on both hips, college injuries. He's been a pretty damn good NFL quarterback. A damn good one, quite frankly. So credit to him for overcoming and getting to this point. It's unfortunate. Nobody wants to see that. It overshadows the game. And you have to pivot. You have to give credit to the Bills because the Bills, prior to Tua's concussion, he was awful last night. Let's be honest here. He was dreadful in that game. 3 interceptions, 2 of them directly his fault. He missed throws, made poor decisions. The offensive line got whooped by Ed Oliver and them boys for the Buffalo Bills. It wasn't close. Looked like a team that could very well contend for the Super Bowl and a team that's going to miss the playoffs, which is what I think will happen, as I predicted at the beginning of the year. The Dolphins with Tua aren't that threatening to me. They're not that great of a team. They're average. In the last 12 games that the Dolphins have played teams over 500, they are 1-11. That's not a great team. That's not a team that's threatening. That's not a team that's going to get over the hump. The Miami Dolphins beat up on bottom feeders, which is fine. You can do it, and you can get to the playoffs doing it. But when you get to the playoffs and you play a team that's better than you, you get pumped, which is what's happened the last 2 years. And with Tua being a question mark, Mike McDaniel said this morning, Skylar Thompson is the quarterback moving forward for the Dolphins. Skylar Thompson was a 7th-round pick a number of years ago from Kansas State. He's been in the organization for multiple years, so he knows the scheme. He knows what's going on. He beat out Mike White for the number 2 job in Miami. They're not winning anything with Skylar Thompson. No way, no how. I don't see much. I don't see optimism with him playing. I don't think it's like, yay, we got Skylar Thompson. Looking at his numbers for last night, and it was weird because he comes in midway through the third quarter. 8 for 14, 80 yards, sacked once, 1 rush, 4 yards. He's a backup quarterback. That's what he is. The bigger deal, Tyreek Hill, 3 catches, 24 last night. Waddle, 4 for 41. Jonnu Smith had 6 catches. The offense didn't look ready. It didn't look in sync with Tua or with Skyler. This team's pumped a lot of money into Tyreek, into Jalen Ramsey, into Tua. Now what? If I'm the Dolphins, you've put money into this. You can't just punt on the season. And playing Skylar Thompson is punting on the season, in my opinion. It's giving up. It's waving the white flag. And I'd be pissed if I was a Dolphin fan, quite frankly. Dolphins play on a Thursday. That means you don't play until the following Sunday, and you have to go to Seattle. Woof. Going to Seattle in that environment with Skylar Thompson, good luck. They then play the Titans on Monday Night Football at home, at the Patriots, at the Colts after a bye week, Cardinals. That next month isn't that difficult. You're playing teams that all didn't make the playoffs last year. You did. They need to win all of these games if they're going to have a chance to make the playoffs, the Dolphins. Because their back half, look at this, November 3rd at Buffalo. Yeah, we'll see how that went last night. At the Rams, Raiders. Okay, you got an easy one. Patriots, at Packers, Jordan Love will be back. Jets, at Texans. 49ers, at Cleveland in late December in that cold. At the Jets. How many of those are they winning? Well, if they're playing teams over 500, they're not winning them. They're 1-11 their last 12. They have a couple options. And this might sound crazy to Dolphins fans. Bear with me. The Miami Dolphins have to make a call. And they have to make a call to Ryan Tannehill, who's unemployed at the moment. And yeah, he's not perfect, but he's better than Skylar Thompson. He's been to an AFC championship game. You have a longer time for him to learn the offense, to come in. Joe Flacco did this last year. Came off the street. Got Cleveland to the playoffs. Tannehill is a good quarterback. I'm not saying he's better. They're different, him and Joe Flacco. But I like Devon Achane. If you run the football effectively, which they can do because they did last night, get Tyreek, get Jalen Waddle in the offense, have somebody emerge as a number 3 receiver because they don't have one. Robbie Chosen isn't going to do it. Maybe it's Jonnu Smith at tight end. But Skylar Thompson, no way. Ryan Tannehill is the best free agent quarterback available. He's better than Blaine Gabbert. He's better than Ben DiNucci. He's better than Mike White, who's on the Bills practice squad, who was formerly with the Dolphins. Unless Tom Brady's coming out of the booth because he sucks in the booth, then you're not getting a better person, better quarterback right now than Ryan Tannehill. Give him a call. Because if I had to guess, and it's so early, and we don't know anything yet, I don't think Tua plays again this season. That's my guess. Nothing on it, no reporting, just gut instinct. I don't think Tua plays again this season. I don't know if he ever plays again. And I think the Dolphins internally are prepared for that likelihood, for that to become true, to not have Tua, to say it's week 3 and we don't have the quarterback we expected. Obviously, that's not ideal. But it's also not, okay, let's just give up. Let's play Skylar Thompson for the next 16 weeks. That's not a winning formula either. So I think they should get on the phones and see if Ryan Tannehill can come in and learn the offense starting this weekend. He knows Miami. He's familiar with it. He's never had Mike McDaniel as a coach, but every quarterback seems to love working with Mike McDaniel. Tannehill's a veteran, pro. Bring him in. Because there's going to be another injury because it's sports, and Tannehill will get a job somewhere. And if I'm Ryan Tannehill, I want this Dolphins job because you're not going to a crap place. You get to play with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and Devon Achane. Flacco going to the Browns wasn't a bad situation either. He had a good team. One of the better defenses in the NFL. Amari Cooper on offense, David Njoku. There might be a job that opens up for Ryan Tannehill. It might be a crap. He doesn't want to go to Carolina. Play for them. No way. I'm not going there. He's made enough money. He doesn't have to play. He might want to play. This is a situation where it's awesome going into it. I would do it. So I'm curious to see what the Dolphins do over the next 24 to 48 hours. But the Bills, who struggled a bit in week 1, overcame the Cardinals, were dominant last night. Their defense was on point. Josh Allen did what he had to do. James Cook had 3 touchdowns in the first half. They were just efficient. Their offense is not so Josh Allen dependent. He's checking the ball down. They're running the football. Their offensive line is keeping him relatively clean. The Bills have looked good through 2 weeks. They now get some time off after a short week. And they get the Jags on Monday Night Football in Buffalo. So they get extra time to prepare for that game. Good on Buffalo. Horrible disaster night for the Miami Dolphins. And that's just, it's obvious, but you got to bring it up. We have a full slate of games in the NFL this weekend. Week 2, we already have had a ton of injuries, a lot of storylines to dive into, and some games that hold a lot of meaning, that have some kind of history dating back to last year. So let's go through them. Let's start with America's team, the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys host the New Orleans Saints this weekend in Big D, Dallas's home opener. Cowboys, huge winners on the road in Cleveland last week. New Orleans crushing the Carolina Panthers. Good vibes in Dallas. Feeling good. Week 1 couldn't have went any better. To me, this is a trap game opportunity because Dallas is better than New Orleans. New Orleans, so I've talked about, is a fugazi team. They look great in week 1 playing the Panthers. And I will never tell anyone to bet on the Panthers again because I will never make that mistake because the Panthers stink and they are an abomination. Looking beyond that, New Orleans, Derek Carr played great. Had his best performance in a couple years against the Carolina Panthers. Now, Derek Brown left that game early, the best pass rusher for the Panthers. He's now out for the season. The Cowboys put a ton of pressure on Deshaun, and yes, that offensive line for Cleveland was horrible, but I like the Dallas Cowboys pass rush again. The Saints could keep this close if Derek Carr doesn't turn the ball over, if the offensive line can keep them in check. But I don't think Chris Olave, the best receiver for the Saints, and Derek Carr really have a connection. That concerns me. He likes to throw the ball away and make stupid decisions, in particular after having a great week. Cowboys might be better than I expected they'd be. They might still have a more difficult season. But I said week one, the easiest bet was to bet on Dallas to beat Cleveland because Cleveland I just have no faith in. Cowboys at home. Saints are feeling good, but so do the Cowboys. That pass rush. Dak was good in week one, didn't have to be great. I don't know if he'll have to be great in this one either. I think the Cowboys will force a couple turnovers. I think Dak will be efficient. I'm taking the Cowboys to win the game for sure, no doubt about it. 6.5. I'm fine with that. I think Cowboys can win this game by 10 plus. I like the Cowboys to win outright at home. Rematch of the NFC divisional game last year, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers heading to Ford Field to play the Detroit Lions. Two teams that I thought were very good in week one. Tampa, Baker Mayfield, NFC Player of the Week, 4 touchdown passes, 2 to Mike Evans, almost a perfect passer rating, and the Lions beat the Rams, yes, at home, but the Rams are legit, and the Lions won in overtime. This was a close game last year in the playoffs. The Lions were close to blowing it, giving Tampa the win. Tampa impressed me in week one. Baker played fantastic. To me, he's just comfortable in his environment. He likes Tampa. They like him. His teammates have confidence in him. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. They have it going. They now have Bucky Irving, who was playing at Oregon last year, and Rachaad White, so a 2 running back kind of combination, which is great. You all know I'm huge on Detroit. I love the Lions. I think they're going to get to the Super Bowl. And Amon-Ra St. Brown, who got paid in the offseason, didn't have a great week one, to say the least. Week one, Amon-Ra, pull up his stats for you. He had 3 catches for 13 yards. Not exactly impressive, being their best receiver. However, it's 1 week. A lot of guys didn't have great week ones. A lot of quarterbacks didn't play that well in week one, Jared Goff being one of them. Jamison Williams was the big guy, 5 for $121. Jahmyr Gibbs was quiet. St. Brown was quiet. So, all that being said, I think St. Brown will have a better week 2. He had a really good divisional game against these same Buccaneers. Buccaneers lost a lot in their linebacking room and in their safety position this offseason. Lions are a 7.5 point home favorite. I like the Lions to win the game. I like St. Brown. If you go on FanDuel right now, which I'm going to do, FanDuel Sportsbook. If I go on there and you go on NFL, and I go Detroit Lions, I like St. Brown anytime touchdown in this game, just because I think he's going to have a big game. And you look at his receiving prop, 79.5. I like him to go over that number. St. Brown has a huge day. Lions win at home to improve to 2-0. But the Bucs keep it close like they did last year in the playoffs. The Bucs cover the 7.5 on the road. It's early in the season. Teams are still figuring out how to do this early on. Tampa looked great in week one. I think Baker will play solid again. Give me Tampa to cover, Lions to win, so Tampa plus 7.5. I'm starting off with this one. I am not betting this game. I'm advising all of you to not bet this game because I'm so concerned about this one. scares the hell out of me. Cleveland Browns head to Jacksonville to play the Jaguars. Jags had a win in week 1 and gagged it away to the Dolphins, who, as we saw last night, aren't very good. The Browns got smoked 33-17 at home in week 1. I don't trust either team. I don't trust either quarterback. I trust Kevin Stefanski more than I do Doug Peterson. But this game just scares me. My instinct is to take Cleveland, believe it or not. Because Cleveland +3 on the road, I think their defense, who were awful last week, will have a response. Myles Garrett has not practiced yet this week, but that's not atypical. He'll go out and play and normally plays well. You have the Smith on one side, Garrett on the other. They could wreak havoc on Trevor Lawrence. But then I look and go, well, that Jacksonville offense could come alive. I don't have a feel for this game. As I lean Cleveland +3, but I wouldn't. This is a stay away. No feel for this at all. This game, I'm curious to watch it. I'm not betting on it. But it's an interesting one because the loser is 0-2 and you're in big trouble. I will say Cleveland's in bigger trouble if they lose this game because 0-2 in that division, you're in tough. You're in really tough. In particular, if the Steelers, who we'll get to later, win this week as well, which I think they will. So you're going to make up a lot of ground with a shit quarterback with more allegations than he has touchdown passes. Big trouble. We'll see. But again, Myles Garrett has not practiced this week, just so you know if you are betting on the game. And it's Friday, so we probably not practicing today. San Francisco 49ers. I see in the comments, Walker, do we see Jameis start this year? Absolutely. If there's a future on that, I would bet it. Jameis Winston. I might even bet Dorian Thompson-Robinson to start this year because I don't know if Deshaun wants to play. He seems to take unnecessary hits. It's almost as if he knows he's got the money coming, so if he's hurt, okay, whatever. And when he's on the field, he's horrible. To me, you can't go wrong playing Jameis. You can't. Because Jameis is, he's going to throw interceptions, likely 30 of them, but he is also going to throw touchdown passes. And maybe that defense can be the equalizer. They weren't in week 1, but it was week 1, and they'll get better. Jameis Winston starts this year? Absolutely. -1,000. Hammer it. I'm not sure Deshaun, if they're playing Jacksonville, not exactly a great team this week. If they lose to Jacksonville and it's another embarrassing game, I know he's getting all that money coming in, and I know they can't get off the contract because it's an albatross, but it very well could be a situation where you go, we have no choice. This fan base deserves better. We want to try to win. We have the reigning coach of the year. Give me somebody who's competent, and that might be Jameis. Or DTR, who I don't hate. I think Dorian Thompson-Robinson can play. We saw that a little bit last year. UCLA Bruin, DTR. San Francisco heading to Minnesota. No Christian McCaffrey for the second straight week. If you're playing fantasy, or if you want to bet on him, rushing yards, things of that nature. He's not playing. He's got an Achilles problem, tendonitis. I wouldn't play him until he's 100% healthy. They have a good enough team that they can beat 90-95% of the league without him in the lineup. Not hyperbole. Sam Darnold was a member of the 49ers last year. Was their backup quarterback behind Brock Purdy. He looked great in week 1, although it was against the New York Football Giants. And if you don't look great against that team, you got a bigger issue. I don't mind Minnesota. I like to play in a tough division. And the 49ers are really good. Jordan Mason probably is another big game, but Brian Flores is a good defensive coordinator, and he'll have options. He'll have a game plan to try to shut down the 49ers. I thought take the Jets week 1. That was a stupid decision. So why take the Jets? Why? The Vikings at home. If it was outdoors, you have some sort of an advantage, but it isn't. It's in a dome. It's also September, so the weather isn't that bad. Jefferson was quiet in week 1, like most receivers, as we kind of touched on. If I'm Minnesota in this game, I'm taking shots down the field because to me, San Francisco's biggest weakness are their corners. Hufanga might not play again. He's a very good safety. If he's not out there, their team's worse. Fred Warner, when you want to run the football or you want to play the underneath game, you're in big trouble because Fred Warner is a transformer. He's the best middle linebacker in football. He's a human wrecking crew. He basically can play 2 positions at the same time. He's that good. So I'm taking shots down the field of Minnesota. I'm throwing to Jefferson. I'm throwing to Jordan Addison, Jalen Naylor. I think Minnesota will hang around. This game could be close in the second half. But I think you might get a field goal, a touchdown late in the fourth quarter. I like San Francisco to cover the 6.5 points. They're a 6.5 point road favorite. I think they'll cover that number. They beat Minnesota and cover the number in the Twin Cities. Los Angeles Chargers, Jim Harbaugh, heading to Carolina to play the Panthers. Quite simple. Here's my rationale. I have already picked the Chargers in my survivor pool. Chargers are the pick. I picked the Bears in week 1, and I barely survived, but I like to live dangerously. Chargers are playing Carolina. Carolina lost 47-10 in week 1. Carolina, Bryce Young looks distraught. The Chargers actually have a pretty good defense now. They have a great offensive line. Derek Brown, as I mentioned, the best defensive player, maybe the best player on the Carolina Panthers roster, is now out for the season. And Carolina is only a 5.5 point dog. Now, I realize that the Chargers weren't that impressive in week 1, playing the Raiders, although they didn't win by 12 points, with Carolina losing by 37, and they were only a 4.5 point dog. Chargers are going to run the ball, play action. Chargers, minus 5.5. I'm not betting the Panthers to cover. But this is a stupid game to bet on. These games, 5.5 point. I'm just bet an underdog. Come on. But Chargers, of course. Also, Chargers survivor pool. Easy. Las Vegas Raiders head to Baltimore to play the Ravens. We haven't seen the Ravens since last Thursday, losing to the Chiefs in the closing moments. Lamar hasn't practiced much this week, but again, that happens quite frequently. He was the MVP of the league last year, and he was pretty damn good in week 1. The Raiders put up 10 points against the Chargers. Gardner Minshew did some really stupid things with the football. Max Crosby did not get a pressure on Justin Herbert going up against Joe Alt. Joe Alt was a great player at Notre Dame and was the 5th pick overall in the draft. The thing about Baltimore, if you remember week 1, their offensive line was a flat-out disaster. Chris Jones could have had about 5-6 sacks in that game if Lamar was not Lamar. If it was Joe Flacco's statue quarterback or Phillip Rivers, they might be in 2 at this point. So the Raiders have a chance if that Baltimore offensive line is a disaster. And Baltimore is a 8.5 point favorite. which this line is surprising to me because I think normally you go, okay, Raiders, not a very good team. Baltimore, one of the best teams in the AFC, reigning MVP at quarterback. They should be a 10-point favorite in this game. They're not because of that offensive line. That's why it's 8.5 and not 10 or even 12. I'll tell you, I wish this line was 10 because I would take the Raiders. Vegas knows what they're doing. They're putting it in the middle. They're trying to screw with you. If this was Vegas plus 10 at Baltimore, I would take Vegas. Because if I can get a double-digit dog anywhere, I'm in on it. If you could buy it up and get a teaser, Raiders plus 10, buy the points, then I'm in. Because I think 10's a lot. And 10 with that pass rush, get the Ravens off the field, settle for a couple field goals, couple fourth down stuffs, maybe you're in it. But 8.5, not enough for me. Not enough for me to go, okay, yeah, Raiders are going to keep them to a little over a touchdown game. Just not buying it. Ravens at home, minus 8.5. Seattle Seahawks visiting the New England Patriots. Oh, this is interesting. This game is fascinating to me. You might go, why is this game fascinating, Noah? Seattle, who cares? Kind of a boring team. Patriots, boring, one of the worst quarterbacks in the league. No real identity. Seattle's offensive line was horrible in week 1. To really make that point for you all, we're going to do this little thing. The Seattle Seahawks offensive line in week 1 allowed 12 pressures. 12 pressures. Too many. It wasn't pretty. Geno Smith had his issues in the game. The defense looked good. Give him that. But I think you got two teams that trust their defenses, and two teams that you might look at their offensive line and go, I don't know how they're going to play. Jacoby Brissett was a scrambling game manager in week 1. And that's how it's going to have to be all season for the Patriots to even be somewhat successful. It's 3.5, and the Patriots can compete in this game, partly because they're at home. They're not a great team, but Seattle has flaws. On paper, I love Seattle's offense. DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Noah Fant, Tyler Lockett, Kenneth Walker Jr. III. I mean, they're loaded. But they put up 26 against the Broncos. And the Broncos defense gave up 73 points to the Dolphins last year. Same defensive coordinator. A lot of the same players. So that offensive line going up against the Patriots, who had 4 sacks in week 1 against Joe Burrow and the Bengals, Seattle has to do play action. Seattle has to get players in motion on the move. It can't be stagnant. Seattle is the better team, but the Bengals were the better team in week 1 as well. And seeing the 3.5 line, it's telling you that Vegas, I don't know. We don't trust Seattle. They weren't great in week 1. They covered in week 1. I'll give them that. But I expect the Patriots to compete. And if you're going to take an underdog this week, I would take the Patriots. I don't hate the pick. It's a dangerous one. Even if you want to buy up a couple points, get that to 5-6. I like that. Do I trust the Patriots to put up points? No. But I trust them to make it a tough day on Geno Smith and that offense. And that could be enough to keep the game close and make it a game into the fourth quarter. Patriots plus 3.5. Indianapolis Colts heading to Green Bay to play the Packers. Before the season, there's no way that a dome team is heading to Green Bay. I don't care if that it's September. And they are going to be a favorite in Lambeau Field. However, in week 1, Jordan Love was injured on the second last play of the game. He has an MCL sprain, and he is going to miss 3 to 6 weeks. He's not going on the injured list, but he's out a period of time. The Packers did not like their backup quarterback situation in training camp, so they traded for Malik Willis from the Tennessee Titans, who's now their number 2, and he's in line to start on Sunday against the Colts. The Colts lost in week 1, but they played a competitive game in Houston. At home against Houston, losing by 3 and covering the 3.5. I don't know. I've seen Malik Willis play. I saw him play at Liberty. He was great at Liberty because he could scramble in college and just run over the field, and it worked for him. That's not going to happen in the NFL when he's been on the field. If we look at Malik Willis so far in his career in the National Football League, does not have a passing touchdown. $31 for 61 in 22-23. 4 for 5 in 23-24. And 0 for 1 this season. 0 touchdowns, 3 interceptions during that span. Now, Green Bay is a better situation than he had in Tennessee, but still, the numbers are the numbers. Clearly, the Packers believe that Jordan Love will be back sooner rather than later because I think they would have made a different choice than having Malik Willis play. He could go out and surprise people. I wish him the best. Colts are a 3-point favorite on the road. Anthony Richardson had his good moments and bad moments in week 1. That's going to be his game. He'll be up and down. He'll make some plays that just make you jump out of your seat because you haven't seen it before. I said he's Cam Newton 2.0. I like the Colts to win in Green Bay, and I also like them to cover the number as the 3-point favorite. Colts get their first win of the season at Lambeau on Sunday. Jets, short week, losing in San Francisco, now head to Tennessee to play the Titans. Jets defense was awful in week 1. Jordan Mason had 147 rushing yards. They controlled the line of scrimmage, and that was that. However, I believe Rodgers played decent in that game. I saw some things from him that I go, okay, that will correlate. That'll work. I think a lot of people just want him to fail. So you go, oh, they were so bad, so pedestrian in that game, whatever. The liberals can do what they want, but the objective people can sit down and watch the game. I want to see him throw the ball down the field more like he did to Allen Lazard on that free play, which he threw for a touchdown. Tennessee's defense is not elite. They were good in week 1, but Caleb Williams, a rookie, they didn't give up an offensive touchdown. Yet they still lost the game because Malik Willis had 3 turnovers, including a pick six late in the third quarter to Tyreek Stevenson. Their offense just scares me. Malik Willis, his decision-making scares me. The Jets absolutely need to win this game on the road. The Jets play at Tennessee, then play the Patriots on Thursday Night Football. So a tough start to the season for the Jets. Monday, Sunday, Thursday for them. So 3 quick games. I believe they win. I believe they win by more than 3.5 points. Aaron will have a good game. People in the Jets world will start to feel good about them again. I still have them going to the AFC Championship game. I very well could be wrong about that. New York Football Giants at the Washington Commanders, aka Washington Football Team. G-Men crushed by the Vikings in week 1. Daniel Jones, atrocious play. Then you have Washington, whose defense looked awful. Jaden Daniels ran the ball really effectively, had 2 rushing touchdowns, but left a lot to be desired on the field. So Washington's only a 1.5 point favorite at home, which is interesting because the Giants stink, to make everybody clear in how I feel about them. But I look at this game, I go, I don't trust Daniel Jones. Yes, Malik Neighbors is going to play, which is huge for the Giants. But no Saquon, no real huge rushing threat as a team, other than Daniel Jones, really. Washington defense was horrible. That is Dan Quinn's MO. He's a defensive coach. Coach up that side of the football, kind of like the same job as Robert Saleh for the Jets. Jaden Daniels needs to throw from the pocket a little more. Needs to avoid taking hits, certainly. They lost by 17. Obviously not ideal. 17 for 24, a $184, sacked twice, 16 carries for 88 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, 3 fumbles, but didn't lose any of them. I want to see them run the football more with Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler. Get Terry McLaurin involved, throw him the football. Despite the fact that the Washington football team were not that impressive in week 1, I have them winning 1.5. They are at home. I just don't trust the Giants at all. Washington gets their first win. Jaden Daniels gets his first win of the season. And his first win in the NFL. That brings us to our 5 o'clock slate. The Los Angeles Rams head to Arizona to play the feisty Cardinals. Who do you think is the favorite in this game? You go, well, Rams were a playoff team last year. Rams took the Detroit Lions, who got to the NFC Championship game last season, to overtime in week 1. Rams, despite the fact that they're on the road, probably the favorite, right? No. The Rams are a 1.5 point dog in Arizona. Why? Here's why. Rob Havenstein, Alex Avila, Joe Noteboom. All starters on the Ram offensive line are out for a period of time. Could be a couple weeks at least for all of them. But they're all not playing this coming weekend. The Rams assigned a player from the Eagles practice squad and a guy from the Bills practice squad to come in for practice this week. Not to mention, Puka Nacua is out for at least 4 weeks. He was put on the physically unable to perform list on Monday, so he's out. So 3 offensive linemen, your number 2, aka number 1 wide receiver, also out for this game. That's a lot of injuries. And Tyler Higbee, their starting tight end, might also be unavailable. So that's a problem. Not to mention the Cardinals played extremely well against the Bills in week 1. They were in it till the very end. Kyler Murray missed seeing Marvin Harrison Jr. down the field. He was wide open for a touchdown. Cardinals could have stole that game on the road in Buffalo, but they didn't. But they're getting some respect, and I think they're a decent team. And I think logic says Marvin Harrison Jr. will get the ball in week 2, despite the fact that Kyler said, not my job to throw him the football, even though it is his job to throw him the football. You are the quarterback, and he is the guy that was taken 6th overall in the draft, so that would be a good idea to throw Maserati Marv the ball. That might be a smart thing to do. Anyway, Cardinals are good. Cardinals can play. They're fast. They can move over the field. The Bills-Cardinals game was one of the more entertaining games of week 1. Kyler might not win a bunch of games, but he's entertaining to watch at the very least. A ton of problems for the Rams. Mentioned the injuries. But I still love their team. I still think they're gutsy. When you have Stafford on the field, and you can have Cooper Kupp on the field, and you have Kyron Williams on the field, and Blake Corum, and Tyler Johnson, who had a huge coming out party, was in Tampa for a number of years, didn't work out, going to work with the Rams seemingly. This is going to be a close game. This is going to be an awesome 5 o'clock game. I like the Rams to win on the road. Yes, overcome all these injuries. Stafford is that guy. McVay is that guy. Rams plus 1.5, and I think they win the game outright. Pittsburgh Steelers head to Denver to play Sean Payton and the Broncos. This was initially set up as the Russell Wilson revenge game. Back in Denver, playing his former head coach, Sean Payton. Sean hated him. They eaten dead money on the contract. Good riddance. He's now in Pittsburgh. However, Russell Wilson still dealing with a calf injury. They're worried that if he plays, he'll be like Joe Burrow last year and make it more serious. So he will be held out for the second straight game, and that means Justin Fields will start week 2. Justin Fields did not lead a touchdown drive in week 1, 6 field goals, although the Steelers still won because they have TJ Watt and Cam Hayward, Chris Boswell, who's one of the better field goal kickers in the NFL. But they play the Broncos, who defensively were really good. Alex Singleton, former CFLer, interception of Geno Smith on the first drive. They limited Seattle to 26 points, and you could argue that their defense was better than 26 points because Seattle had a lot of short fields with the lack of play from Bo Nix, who really struggled in his NFL debut. And you go from getting Seattle, whose defense is okay, to getting the Steelers, who are coming at you every play. Bo Nix in week 1, 26 for 42, $138, 2 interceptions, sacked twice. He was also their leading rusher, which is a problem. And they're missing Audric Estime as well. The former Notre Dame running back is out for at least 4 weeks for the Broncos, so they're without him in week 2. This could be an ugly game for Bo Nix. If he comes out and plays fantastic, great progress in a week. But I look at that Steeler defense. They are menacing. They're going to be ready to play. Their second straight road game. If they start the season 2-0 on the road, they are going to be fired up. Justin Fields was good in week 1. Wasn't great. He has stuff to improve on. He should be their quarterback. I don't care when Russell Wilson gets healthy. To me, it's Justin Fields the rest of the way. He gives you your best chance to win, and he's more athletic. He's more dynamic. He gives you more options than Russell Wilson does. Now, Mike Tomlin might want to go back to the veteran because that's kind of his style, but I like Justin Fields. If he has a really good game in week 2, it puts the pressure on the coaching staff to stick with the guy winning ball games. I like the Steelers to win again. I like the Steelers to win. Start the season 2-0 because they are the Steelers. Go into Denver, pick up the win, and Bo Nix likely has a hard day. Final 5 o'clock game. The Cincinnati Bengals, who lost week 1 to the New England Patriots, will head to Arrowhead to play the Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs, who, big storyline of the week, Brittany Mahomes endorses Trump. Taylor Swift endorses Kamala, whatever the fuck she wants to be called. And you have Patrick Mahomes, who doesn't endorse any of them because he's great. He says he's friends with everybody. Doesn't matter what kind of political association they take. Smart thing. And Caitlin Clark said the same thing. Good on both of them. Two of the bigger athletes in pro sports right now. And I think that's a really good stance to take. We could learn something from it, including yours truly. Now, getting back to football. We just learned just before the podcast started, Hollywood Brown, who missed week 1, former Raven, former Cardinal, was placed on the injured reserve. He will miss the next 4 games for the Chiefs. He did not play in week 1. He will not play until at least week 6 for the Chiefs. We did see in week 1, Rashee Rice was awesome. Pacheco was great. It was a quiet week for Travis Kelce. He's got more to give. No Hollywood Brown. I don't think it's a huge issue. Worthy was pretty damn good, if you remember. It was a while ago, but Xavier Worthy had 2 for 47 in a TUD. He also had a rushing touchdown. Noah Gray, 3 for 37. They got guys. He didn't have great receivers last year, and they won the Super Bowl, so I'm not too concerned. But now you get the Bengals. Bengals coming off a loss. Bengals desperate. Because the Steelers could be 2-0 after this game. When they play the Broncos. Steelers could be 2-0. Bengals 0-2 chasing the division. Chiefs at home. I love betting the Chiefs. I do. Because it's normally a winning formula. Maybe some money during the playoffs last year. But the Bengals always seem to play well against the Chiefs. The Bills don't. The Bills lose every game against the Chiefs. Joe Burrow seems to know how to beat Steve Spagnuolo, that defense, Andy Reid, and Patrick Mahomes. Now, I don't think the Bengals are going to win this week. I'm going to start off by saying that. I think the Chiefs will improve to 2-0. They'll play pretty well, and they'll beat 2 really good teams to start the year, which is impressive. However, I do think the Bengals are going to cover the 5.5, and I'll tell you why. Joe Burrow has to play better this week. And that sounds, he has to. It doesn't mean he's going to. Okay. They need to put some movement into that offense. They need to run the football, which they can, which they did not do in week 1. Chase Brown needs carries. Chase Brown's a solid running back. They might look at him as, he's a third down guy that can move around a little bit. Bubkiss, the guy can play. Give him some snaps. Give him the football. Zach Moss averaged 5 yards a carry in week 1 against the Patriots. He only had 9 carries. Maybe give him the ball more. Chase Brown, 3.7 yards a carry. Okay, give them the football. They threw the ball 29 times, averaging 3 yards a pass. That's garbage. You're not picking up a first down. Jamar Chase, 6 for 62. He was fine. No T. Higgins. That's a problem. Do they really have a number 2 receiver? Not yet. They need to use the running backs. They need to use Avayachus, who I think is great, who can play. And that defense is solid, and that Kansas City offensive line wasn't great. Trey Hendrickson, Sam Hubbard, And them boys can get after the quarterback. We've seen it before. I think we'll see a version of it again. Gonna be a tough battle. Chiefs find ways to win these games, but the Bengals always seem to keep it close. I like the Bengals plus 5.5. I like the Chiefs to win the game. If you want to bet it up to 7, go ahead. Final game of the day. The Chicago Bears are on Sunday Night Football, and they are heading to Houston to play the Texans. The Chicago Bears did not score an offensive touchdown in week 1, and yet they won the game. Caleb Williams did not throw for 100 yards in week 1, yet they won the game. Caleb will be better in week 2. That doesn't mean they're going to win the game, but he will be better. You got to go up against Daniil Hunter. You got to go up against Will Anderson Jr., who he knows well, playing against him in the college football playoff. Houston's a good team. Houston did struggle against Indy. They nearly lost the game, but it's a divisional game. It's week 1, and C.J. Stroud was not the problem, quite frankly. I like Houston minus 6.5. They're at home. Home opener, a lot of expectations on this team. 2 future quarterbacks of the league in C.J. Stroud and in Caleb Williams, 2 guys that can really play. Could see a close half and the Texans taking the lead going up, but they're all healthy right now. Tank Dell, Stephon Diggs, who had 2 touchdowns in week 1, Nico Collins, who had over 120 yards receiving in week 1, Joe Mixon ran for $148. They got a mix of everything now, a better offensive line. Houston minus 6.5, but I'm curious to see how Caleb Williams plays in week 2. The Monday night game is Eagles-Falcons. We'll talk about that on Monday when we recap the weekend, and we'll give you the line and what to look at for Monday night's game. But we will save that for Monday. Let's now pivot to college before we talk UFC this weekend. College football. Week 3. There are some interesting games. I'm not calling it an elite slate of games, but some interesting with the conferences switching up. You have some teams that don't normally play each other who will meet up, which is compelling in its own way. For instance, college football is now buying into Friday nights. There's a game on Fox every Friday night moving forward, which I'm all for. And there's also a pretty decent game on ESPN tonight as well for college football. It's 2 Friday night games. We'll start the game on ESPN. UNLV. Remember UNLV? Pretty good basketball team back in the day. Playing Kansas. Kansas ranked, lost last week. Not ranked anymore. So, Kansas, big expectations in the Big 12, but you lose to the Illini. You lose to Illinois, a Big 10 school. And a game you'd want back. 3 interceptions for their starting quarterback, Jalen Daniels. And you meet UNLV, who are 2-0. And you might go, okay, yeah, they beat Utah Tech. They beat Houston, a Big 12 school, in week 1. So, okay. Now they get Kansas. In Kansas, the Jayhawks, great crowd. They believe in that program more than they ever have. Kansas really had big expectations to win the Big 12 this year. They still can because there's injuries and because Oklahoma has shown signs of being a little concerned. We'll get to them in a minute. 9.5 is the spread. 9.5. That's been going up. It was 7.5. I'm going to check FanDuel real quick because that line's been a little mysterious to me. different books. But yeah, it is now at 9.5 for Kansas. I'm taking UNLV tonight. Kansas is the better team. They are. They're playing a tougher conference. Jalen Daniels had a bad week. Can happen. It's college football. But UNLV is a decent school. Their football program has been improving. It was dreadful for a long time. It is not anymore. Kansas, a lot of expectations with Lance Leipold, the head coach in the Big 12. Their quarterback makes stupid decisions with the football. I like UNLV to cover. Plus 9.5. Arizona, another team who lost last week, had to play K-State. So Arizona did not lose last. I thought they played a close game against Northern Arizona, pardon me. Arizona were awesome last year. Played a bowl game, great season. And this is a great game tonight. Two teams that are 2-0, two teams that are ranked. Arizona 20th, K-State at 14. K-State edged out a win against Tulane last week. Tulane's always a feisty school. They beat Tennessee Martin in week 1. K-State wants to win the Big 12. You look at the Big 12, I just mentioned Kansas, Oklahoma State, you have Colorado, not really worried about them. Arizona State, who are 3-0, who aren't bad. Iowa State, 2-0 to start the year. K-State, new quarterback, Avery Johnson, who's steady, playing well, 65% completion percentage, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception so far in the season, kind of game managing. Arizona, new quarterback as well as Delora, left the program. So it's Noah Fafita, 57 attempts, 37 completions, 65%, so similar, 595 yards, 5 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. The Arizona also has this wide receiver, McMillan, who might be the best wide receiver in the country. 12 catches already on the year, 315 yards, 26 per catch, 4 touchdowns. So he's pretty good. K-State, 7-point home favorite tonight. I like them to win, and I like them to cover that number too. Two good schools, but I believe K-State's a little better, a little farther along with their quarterback development and where they're going. Arizona, great year last year. I think they'll have another good season in the Big 12, just not as productive as they were last year. Alabama. Alabama is heading to play Wisconsin. You don't see this every day. SEC against the Big Ten. No Nick Saban, obviously. Alabama, who struggled for the second straight year against South Florida last week, although they did get the win. Wisconsin, 2-0, but they haven't been that impressive either to start their year. Jalen Milroe, a lot of expectations, a lot asked of him. But I do think he's a good quarterback. I do think that Kalen DeBoer is a really good head coach, and Alabama will compete in the SEC with great teams like Georgia and like Texas, who are both better than them right now anyway. Wisconsin's a 15.5-point home dog. Wisconsin still trying to figure it out with Luke Fickell coming over. Hasn't really worked yet. The Big Ten has gotten better too. Obviously, it's adding more teams. Doesn't help Luke Fickell and his success rate at Wisconsin. Alabama, minus 15.5, but I'm not betting that game. Here's an interesting one. Memphis visiting Florida State. Florida State had a bye. They are 0-2, as you might recall. They lost to Georgia Tech in Dublin. Then they lose to Boston College at home. So now they get a bye, little reset. Memphis is 2-0. American Athletic Conference. One of the teams that could make the college football playoff, like Boise, where you look at them and go, they're pretty good. Like Tulane. This is by far their toughest game on their schedule. They expected Florida State to be ranked. They're not at this point, obviously being 0-2. The rest of the way, they get Navy, not a really tough game. Middle Tennessee, who beat Miami last year, so you never know. South Florida, North Texas, who are tough. Charlotte, University of Texas, San Antonio, Rice, University of Alabama, Birmingham, and at Tulane to close out their year. So this is talent and on paper their toughest game of the year. And it's on the road at the Seminoles. Florida State's a 6.5-point favorite. Haven't heard anything this week on who Florida State's starting at quarterback, whether it's DJ Uiagalelei or if they're going to bench him. Because he's been dreadful through 2 weeks. I'm reading here nothing. Sounds like DGU will start, but they have their second guy taking reps in case it's a struggle. I like Memphis to cover the 6.5 at Florida State. Memphis is a good school. Yes, they're outside of the Power 5. They're a group of 6 school, but they always compete. They produce really good running backs. We saw what Boston College did, run the football on Florida State. Would not shock me at all if Memphis wins this game. And if Memphis does, my God. Whew. I don't know if they win, they cover. That's my angle on this. They cover. College Game Day is going to South Carolina. They are covering LSU, South Carolina. The Gamecocks, with a big win in week 2. They were an underdog, and they go in and they crush Kentucky in Kentucky 31-6. Impressive performance for the Cox. They had their quarterback Sellers, 11 for 15, $159, 2 touchdowns. They ran the football efficiently. Their defense were the story, really. Coming up with 3 turnovers. So, awesome job by the Gamecocks. Now they head to host LSU. LSU losing in week 1, beating Nicholls State in week 2. And LSU is a road favorite, -6.5 against South Carolina. South Carolina had their game last week against Kentucky. You go to Kentucky and you destroy them. And now you have Kirk Herbstreit and Chris Fowler calling this game at 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. So in a day with not a whole lot of marquee games, this is one of them. They're calling that game. They're not calling the 8:30 game. LSU played tough against USC in a great game in week 1. I like Shane Beamer, what he's doing at South Carolina, but I think LSU is actually going to cover the 6.5. You see this in college. You have a letdown after an awesome game. LSU -6.5. They improved to 2-1 and get an important win on their schedule. Notre Dame heading to play Purdue. Notre Dame, you might remember, were a 28.5-point favorite last week, and they lost at home to Northern Illinois. Disaster of a game, just crushing, and now they go to play Purdue. Purdue aren't game changers, so to speak, but they're decent. Hudson Card is transfer quarterback from Texas. Purdue's only played 1 game so far, beating Indiana State. Then had a bye right after, which is a weird start to the season. But now they get Notre Dame at home. They're a 9.5-point favorite. Notre Dame is. You'd love to say take Purdue, but I don't trust Purdue's offense. Notre Dame's defense has actually shown up in their first 2. They just didn't put up points. Purdue, I think Hudson Card will turn the ball over 50. That's his MO. It pains me because I love a dog, but I'm taking Notre Dame to win and take them minus 9.5. Texas A&M at Florida. Texas A&M minus 3.5. Florida stinks. A&M's not great either. This is actually an interesting game because whoever loses this game, that program is in a state of disrepair. First year for Elko coming over from Duke. Billy Napier is absolutely on the hot seat. I think he's fired by the end of the year for the Gators. If they lose this game at home, be their second home loss this year, they're in trouble. And I do think they're going to lose this weekend to Texas A&M. Most surprising line of the weekend for me, and I don't get it. Tulane visiting Oklahoma. You might go, well, Oklahoma, they are the 15th ranked school in the nation. They are 2-0 in the season. Tulane's 1-1, although I just told you K-State beat Tulane. K-State's pretty good. Oklahoma has wins over Houston, 16-12, who are 0-2. That's impressive. And they beat Temple in week 1, 51-3, but who doesn't beat Temple 51-3? Now they get the Green Wave coming to Norman to play them. Oklahoma's going to win this game, but Jackson Arnold struggled last week. Their offense struggled, and Tulane plays tough. And Tulane always has a tough schedule. K-State, ranked. Oklahoma, ranked. They get Memphis later in the year. Not easy. I love Tulane plus 13.5 on the road to cover. Didn't work for App State last week. App State got crushed by Clemson. But I like Tulane plus 13.5. Oklahoma's not that great of a team. They're not. They'll be pushed in this game. Tulane could be on upset alert as well. Oregon State. Huge rivalry. Oregon State, not what they were last year. Neither's Oregon, though. Remember that. Oregon can put up points. I'll give them that. 37-34 win over Boise. Kena walk-off field goal. Boise's played them tough. They've given up more sacks already in 2 weeks than they did all of last season with Bo Nix at quarterback. They had to play Oregon State. Oregon State and Oregon, they always play close games. And as mentioned, Oregon State's not what they were. They shut out San Diego State last week. They beat Idaho State in week 1. I think they can have a pretty decent season, Oregon State, despite the fact that they don't have. They had DJU at quarterback last year. They had some NFL prospects. See their quarterback, Giovanni McCoy, 1 touchdown on the season. Running backs, pedestrian. These games, it's a rivalry game. Oregon State at home, that crowd will be crazy. Oregon wins again, but Oregon State keeps it close. Oregon State plus 16.5. Georgia at Kentucky. Saw what happened last week, right? Kentucky. They're a 24.5 point dog at home. They're not going to cover that. Georgia. UCF at TCU. UCF 2.5 point underdog. I like them to win that game. UCF minus 2.5. Colorado State. Close game last year. Dion, you got to win this one, buddy. This is a game on the schedule that's penciled in for a W. Colorado State's 7.5 point home dog. Stay away. Indiana, UCLA. Indiana's a favorite on the road, and I think they win. Indiana has Nathan Rourke's brother, Curtis, at quarterback. They got a decent team. They play in the Big Ten. But they got an 8:30 game, prime time, against UCLA. Big moment for the kid, quite frankly. good for him to get this opportunity. Trying to find that line now. Indiana at UCLA. Tough to be in the Big Ten because you play good schools. They beat FIU, then they beat Western Illinois. They crushed them both. They have their first tough opponent. UCLA looked dreadful in week 1 against Hawaii. But you look at Indiana. They get UCLA, then they play Charlotte. Then they get Maryland. I think they win their next 3. At Northwestern, they should win that game. Nebraska's their first tough game of the year. Nebraska's a really good school. Then they play Washington, at Michigan State, winnable game. Michigan, I don't think they win, but Michigan's not what they were. At the Ohio State, that's tough. And they finish home to Purdue. Indiana's going to be a bowl team this year. They're going to play a bowl game at the very least. I think they can win 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They could have an 8, 9 win season quietly, the Indiana Hoosiers. And they play in a Big Ten full of really good teams. I think they're going to be 8, 9 wins because of their schedule, and I think they're pretty good. I think their quarterback, you look at him, Curtis Rourke, transferring over from Miami of Ohio, 30 for 41 this year, 73.2 completion percentage, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. That's efficient. Playing good quarterback. Curtis Rourke, Indiana, not a bad team. That's the college football slate this upcoming weekend. As I said, not a whole lot of great games, but there's some good lines, and it's always worth watching. And that finally brings us to UFC 306 at Sphere this coming Saturday night. Be watching this event with some friends, looking forward to that. The main event, you have Sean O'Malley defending his bantamweight title against Merab Dvalishvili. O'Malley defeated Merab's friend, training partner, Aljamain Sterling, for the title. He then defended it back in April against Marlon Chito Vera, and now he gets Merab, who's won 10 fights in a row and is a very tough out every time he gets in the cage. When this opened, Merab was the favorite. But it's been months since this was announced, and now O'Malley is a minus 142 favorite going into the fight. Merab plus 112. I'm curious to see the wrestling of O'Malley because Merab is just such a great grappler. He comes at you the whole fight. He doesn't let you breathe. Always on, but he comes in and he lunges forward. That's going to be difficult with O'Malley, who can hit you with one punch and knock you the hell out. So you can't take those where he was just coming at Henry Cejudo, where there's less of a threat. He can't do that in this fight. So I'm concerned about that and how he manages that, and the distance is also a problem for Merab. I like O'Malley to defend his title. I like O'Malley to remain the champion and him to win. Sean O'Malley will be the bantamweight champion when we talk about it on Monday. Co-main event, the first trilogy in female MMA history. Alexa Grasso will defend her flyweight championship against Valentina Shevchenko. Valentina Shevchenko had 8 straight title defenses until she lost the belt to Alexa International Fight Week pay-per-view in 2023. They then fought at Noche UFC in September of last year, and that fight was a draw. 2 awesome fights. These 2 women are very close in styles. They're both excellent on the feet and on the ground. I thought Shevchenko won the fight last September, but now we get a conclusion to it. Grasso is a minus 140 favorite. Shevchenko plus, this is basically a pick'em fight because the first 2 were so close. Grasso, when she beat Shevchenko for the title, beat her via rear naked choke. The trilogy, the history of this, I like Shevchenko to win Saturday night, actually. Grasso is moving forward. She is going to be around for a while. But I think Shevchenko still has some left in her to become a champion again. She wins back her championship tomorrow night. Third fight on the card is awesome. This was supposed to happen at UFC 303 International Fight Week. Diego Lopez, Brian Ortega in the featherweight division. This fight is really important for both men. If Lopez wins this fight, he very much could be next for either Ilia Topuria or Max Holloway, whoever wins in Abu Dhabi at the end of October. Ortega says he'd like to move up. He's going to move up regardless, but he said he owed the UFC one because he missed weight for that fight. Since coming to the UFC, Lopez has been a machine. The only person he has not finished in a win was Dan Ige, who is as tough as nails, taking that fight 2 hours before it started and showing what he can do. Ortega won his last fight against Yair Rodriguez. Huge finish, submission. I think we get a finish in this fight. I think Lopez is going to win. Lopez, the rising star. Lopez is such a talent. He's on all these huge events. The UFC loves him. I think he beats T-City. The rest of the card, you can look at it and go, it's a little underwhelming, but it's Mexico-based. You have Raul Rojas Jr., who's 19 years old. He's a minus 850 favorite. He's the first fight of the night. I don't know why he's not in the main card. I think he wins again. Manuel Torres, Ignacio Bahamondes. Awesome, a fun fight. You might not know either guy. Watch the fight, you'll learn. They're both really good. I like Bahamondes to win. You can get him at plus 100. Daniel Zellhuber, Esteban Rivicus, fun fight. And you also have Irene Aldana, who hasn't fought since last December, but she was in a war during her last fight. She won Fight of the Night bonus. She gets Norma Dumont, which I think might steal the show as well. That's the featured prelim. So you could look at it and go, it's only 10 fights, a little underwhelming. I'm curious to see what Sphere looks like. I think the card will be good, actually. So I can't wait to watch it tomorrow night. That's what's coming up this weekend. There's also baseball. Didn't get to it today, but we will. We get closer. Training camps are opening. Max Pacioretty's a Maple Leaf. Well, you have Nick Robertson, Leaf again. Sidney Crosby says probably going to sign an extension. Wish he wouldn't. But we'll get to that at a later date. Thank you all for tuning in today. I really appreciate the support as always. Until next time, I'm Noah Warren, and this is To The Point.